Let me set this up very, very quickly. And you see my slide, right? Live exploiting your open source dependencies. Well, first, I'm Brian, so now you do not have to talk to me anymore at the after party, because we know each other now, right? Well, first of all, nice to be here, thanks. I want to set one thing straight. I am not a hacker. I just try to show you something, because what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about this word, DevSecOps. Who practices DevSecOps? Who likes DevSecOps? Who wants to do DevSecOps? Who likes the word DevSecOps? I'm not a big fan of the word, to be honest, because that security stands in the middle, and, well, first I don't like the word, but I like the meaning of it. But I think that security should be part of dev and should be part of ops and shouldn't be a separate word. It's the same as talking to people that maintenance or scalability should be separate there in a stream. I don't think that needs to be there. Although we do need to have the adoption. That's why we have that DevSecOps thing. And we're gonna especially look at that security thing because, well, we're at a security conference, they told me. First of all, I'm Brian. I'm a developer advocate for Snyk. I don't only do presentations, I also engineer. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I do a few things in the community. I'm living in Holland, by the way, or the Netherlands. I would gladly explain the difference, but let's do that at the party with a beer. I'm also working for the Utrecht Java user group. Well, I do some stuff. I'm a co-leader of that My DevSecOps thing we just announced, previously known as the Secure Developer. And I'm a co-lead for the virtual Java user group. But let's get to the next thing, because we are trying to solve a problem. I'm an engineer by trade, a Java engineer. And 5 years ago, or maybe 10 years ago, I worked for a government agency and after that for a bank. The problem was they delivered 3 times a year. They pushed their stuff to production 3 times a year. Last year, well, like more than a year and a half ago, I worked for an e-commerce platform in Holland. And they pushed out 3 times a day. The point is, we want to speed up development. We want to make sure that we're bigger, better, faster, and stronger than our competitors, right? We want to make sure that if we have something new, it needs to be out because we need to be out there before our competitors do. Which is fair, because we need to make money in the end. Although, if we do, we are focusing on features and not so much on security. And that lack of security in our life cycle, we can say, well, is that actually our problem? Or is it the security team? Well, I think that's the first mistake. Because with DevOps, we try to tear down walls. We try to integrate operations and development in one team. But at the end, nowadays, in many organizations, a security team, security expertise is still siloed at the end. And they're basically the people that say no. And as a developer, I hate that. Work 3 weeks hard on a new feature, and then that security person comes up and says, no, you cannot go to production. And my first is, why? And they say just no. And what the point is it's not I'm right or they're right, because I need to go out with that to make profit, or, well, my manager makes profit, I don't. The security people basically want to be that the stuff is secure, right? And at the end, we need to take care of this thing that our customer data would not be compromised. Because if that would be the case, we're both the problem. We're both in trouble. We have these big headlines. Oh, well, that's not that good. But how bad is it? Well, I hope everybody's hand will go up. Who had heard of Equifax? Cool. A bunch of you, not everybody. Who had heard of Equifax 3 years ago? Well, that's good marketing. Like, more than half of you know about Equifax now. And why so? Because they got breached. They're in the news. They know your name. That's good, or not. For those who don't know, Equifax was a US creditor is a US crediting company, and in 2017 they were breached, and basically 143 million records were exposed to the public. Well, I don't want to talk about Equifax as a company. I want to talk to the problem they had. They used the Java library Apache Struts 2, which at some point had a vulnerability. They didn't know. People got in. People snooped around because they didn't know. And they snooped around for weeks. And after a certain point, they found enough data to expose it. And just by having the wrong dependency in. But still, their tests were working. Their stuff was working. Their integration tests were working. But they just had the wrong version. Well, let me show you what happened. Because this thing was called something with live coding. And let me go into that exploit. I have an application over here that has the same struts library. Oh, don't do that. Just, yes. Let me kick it off. It works. We do not have to go in there, but I will go into the problem of Apache struts. For Apache struts, the point is, with struts we can do certain things. We can call out to different parts of the website, and we can do routing. But if we use this header, well, basically what we do is we insert a content type. Yeah, this. Who recognizes this content type? One. Most of you don't, right? Because it's an illegal content type. It's not JSON, it's not HTML, it's not plain text, whatever. Now, what we do here is what people found out is that you can utilize OGNL, which is the domain-specific language or the expression language, which can be used in Apache struts. With that OGNL, you can alter objects within the runtime. You can access getters, setters, whatever. But you also can create new objects. And basically, what we do is, are there any Java programmers here in the room? Or did some Java in the past, like that old language that was, yeah, I know. You know that PHP, or that JavaScript is just as old, right? Just saying. No, but what we're trying to do is we're calling a process builder. And with the process builder, we can basically do anything, because what we do is we call the bash. And we feed the bash a command. So what we can do here, that content type is illegal. We are going into an exceptional flow. In that exceptional flow, with this header, with this stuff, with this content type, I can utilize OGNL. I will get an error back, which that's no problem. But by using OGNL, I will insert a process builder, I will insert a command, and that command can be any command that is available on my Linux distro. So that means this one is running on Heroku. So let me just see where I have my notes. Yeah, over here. Struts, exploits. And let's call, well, make it easy one. We are calling for the environment variables. We just call env. We substitute command with env, and let's not do it on our local system. Let's copy this one, go back to the terminal, and do that on a cloud instance, because, well, cloud is hyped. And what we see here is that I have the environment variables of my Heroku instance. So I see with what options Java is running with, for instance, where my Java home is. And this one is fun. Let's keep this one in mind, because I will use it later. But I can see anything. I can call anything that is available on that Linux distro. Basic arbitrary code injection. Or arbitrary code execution, sorry. So far about the struts thing. By simply not knowing what you do, what package you get in, you might be vulnerable. Okay, experiment. How many of you trust their peers? Because we work in teams. How many of you trust their peers? 3. That's a good trust. That's a good audience. How many of you do code reviews? Okay, the rest of you do pair programming. I get it. No, but basically we don't trust our peers because we do review our code, their code, because people can make mistakes. But what do we do with libraries and frameworks? Do we do the same? Or we just, wow, it worked on Stack Overflow. Let's copy-paste it and ship it. That is fun. We have 17 million testers in production, right? If this is your application, probably this is the code you use. This is the code you actually write, because you depend heavily on frameworks and libraries. So much that most of the code that is in production is not yours. I've got a Node serverless example over here. 19 lines of code, 2 dependencies. And these 2 dependencies, the first one is AWS SDK. You feel me, right? It's not that bad. It's only 19 dependencies in total. But how many lines of code do I put into production? Any clue? You scream. 400? 6,000? 1,000, well, 191,155. That's a lot. But okay, this is Node. This is Java. A Spring Serverless example. 222 lines of code because, well, a lot of copy-pasting we did for this demo. It had 5 dependencies, and it's Spring. Spring brings in the world. 54 dependencies in total. How many lines of code do I put into production? Any? Sorry, how many? 500,000. Who says more than 500,000? You're actually right. Almost. And then you can say, yeah, but we do not use all that code. Whoever programmed with the Spring framework? Spring depends heavily on the reflection API in Java. How can you know that you're not using it? Because it comes back to the bytecode. So we can do code analysis, we can do graph analysis on that, but that doesn't mean you do not use it. Because there's a lot of magic under the hood. And if it's in there, what do you say to your fellow developers? Oh, it's in there, you can use it. And the problem in that case is we are using open source. And I love open source, don't get me wrong. But we need to treat it as dangerously, as much as we do treat our own code. Because once there is a vulnerability in open source, we have many, many victims. I mean, that Struts library, Equifax was just there. They were just unlucky. People found that problem, and they were just blindly firing at every server. And then they just came up with a victim, which was Equifax in this case. They were just in the crossfires. They were not targeted. And that's the point with open source. Because if we look at the amount of packages per ecosystem, we see that NPM in the last year, the growth, is the clear winner. And that says something about the quality of the product, in my opinion. But if you look at Maven Central, so Java, I just picked the 2 biggest ecosystems. It's still a growth of 100,000 packages a year between 2018 and 2019. If you look at the vulnerabilities each year, in this case, my favorite language is the clear winner. Not something to be proud of. And the problem is not, in most of the cases, the dependency you put in, but dependencies are depending on dependencies, or depending on other dependencies. So sometimes, deep down below, there is something you might not know that you're using, but has a vulnerability. And that's, in most of the times, that is the case. So, we're asking these open source maintainers about how confident are you in your own security knowledge? 63% says, kinda. Do you trust your own peers if they say kinda? They're humans. We make mistakes. But who's responsible for security? If we ask the general public, we did this in a big survey we call the State of Open Source Security at the beginning of this year. They say 81% thinks that developers should have their fair square. They should know about security, they should think about security at the very least. But it's a shared responsibility between developer, security team, operations, and most of the times. Who of you is a developer over here? Who's a manager? Who does operations? The rest is sleeping. Fun. So we can go on and on, like, how do you find a vulnerability? Some 27% say, I don't know, probably don't. But this is a fun fact. Say something is that. Who works with legacy applications? Who needs to maintain a legacy applications? Good for you. I mean, that's the hard work. Now, basically, greenfield applications, a friend of mine says, is for pussies. I mean, you can do everything right. But the hard thing is, you have an application in the air for many, many years, and you need to maintain it. And you barely want to touch it because it works. But how much time does it take for a vulnerability to be discovered in general? In general, it can take up to 2.5 years. That's the median in this case. So if you have a legacy application out there which you didn't update, just make sure it works, that's all. Reset the computer, which is on your desk, right? Make sure it works. But if it's outward facing, you might have a problem. So we can go on Docker, that we'll probably use Docker images we build on top of things on Docker Hub. And if we look at the top 10 Docker images that we just pulled on Docker Hub, this was done in March, and we build that stuff on top of the node image, we get 567 vulnerabilities for free. You get a vulnerability, and you get a vulnerability. And the fun part is, all these vulnerabilities were not Node's problem or Postgres' problem. Most of these were the operating system layer underneath. Because I just pulled on the latest that was built, unfortunately, on a very old Debian Jessie version, which had a lot of operating system vulnerabilities. So you have to take care of these as well. And yes, not all of these are actually useful in your system, but you have to think of it. Well, we can go on and on about how do we deploy, how do we find out, but I'm going into the hacking mode again. So let's get into this application. We have, you see, I'm a very good designer, right? We have an application here that can, list to-dos, like something like buy flowers. Cool. And what this application can do as well is we have a very awesome about page. Again, well designed. It is scalable, whatever. I know this application is using the ST library, which, well, what we can do in Node is that we can use or display static content. Let me enlarge this one. What do we do if we want to hack such a package? Because I know for a fact there is a path traversal vulnerability in there. What should I do first? First, you put on your hoodie, because, well, now you look like a hacker, they say. And then you go to the terminal, because no hacker in his sane mind would do it from the browser. And there's a real reason about it. With curl, I can give you the raw commands instead of doing it through the browser, which might adapt things. So if I curl my about page, I will get my about page. Fun. But let's do path traversal. So instead of this, path traversal normally would be like // etc., right? And I can do this for an infinite amount, because if I do // in the root, I will be ending up in the root. Let's see what happens. I will get redirected to my main page. And that's reasonable, because the ST library is a real library, and it checks for that // part. But it blacklists. So we need to be a bit smarter. Any ideas? Sorry? URL encoding. Okay, what is the encoding for a dot? Yes, scream it. %2e. Who said that? Are you a developer, or are you secretly a hacker? Watch out for that, man. It is true, because it's %2e. It's the URL encoding for a dot. And if I do this, of course, it's working on my local machine, and I do this enough times, I will get my root, and I will see my stuff. And yes, you shouldn't be using this stuff, or you shouldn't be running this stuff as a root admin, but as a, how would you say that, as a user within a certain, with certain limitations. Fair. But look at the average company and how they run their Docker containers. Just saying. So if I go here and I go like to my, and there's nothing in it, of course, but I can read my stuff over there. And that's just the beginning, because now I've got my entry point and I can snoop around, which is fun. Right now I can see what's happening. Nobody in his good mind would actually put passwords in his passwd file, but still, I can do something like this. Let me just say I will just break out of the public folder. And what was it? %2e, and let's see what way I am now. Huh, that's cool, because what I can do now is look at my package.json, and now I can see what kind of libraries you're using. And with that knowledge, I can go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. For instance, coincidentally, I'm using this package, which coincidentally is very vulnerable. Let's take a look at it. Who of you likes regular expressions? Nobody? Then the next question was normally is like, who likes to read or debug other people's regular expressions? Nobody, right? Regular expression is a one-time thing. It's a write-only thing. Let's keep it to that. So let's go back to that thing. How do you know how a regular expression works? If I have something like this, and I want to match that to this, that works. But how do you know that it works? Does it use the plus? Does it use the star? Does it use the plus till halfway and then the star? You basically have no idea. It just works. But what you know is, if it doesn't match, you go into some sort of backtracking mode, and it tries basically all the possible strings and match that to the other string. What if I can make that regular expression and that string as huge as possible? Then it will take a lot of computation power. On how many threads does a node application work? There can be only one. Let's look at that one. So, first of all, I'm gonna show you that this works. I will put in the text "call mom" in 20 minutes, and I'll put it into that form using HTTP. That was hard. By doing this, you will see that it does something with that 20 and that minutes, and it will end up here as 20M. Okay. Let's try this one. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to buy milk. And I will put down 60,000 fives and match that to minutes. Let's see how that works. It would took slightly longer because it's quite a big expression, but it still comes back. Basically, because it matches. So if I look over here, I see buy milk in infinity days. By then it's probably sour, but fair enough, I can do that. I want to go into the backtracking mode of a regular expression. How should I do that? Any ideas? Well, I told you I'm Dutch, right? So I misspell things a lot. Luckily, my coworkers are English, and they can correct me. So, if I make a mistake like this and it doesn't match to minutes anymore, it doesn't match to hours, to days, whatever, you'll see it hangs. I come back to here, try to type something, I can slam the enter button as much as possible, but it won't work until every single operation or every single possibility from that regular expression is checked. And then the computation power is free again, the thread is free, and we can do the other request. Imagine that you only have this kind of website with this application running and you have 2 instances. I just do this twice and the rest of the day you're done. If I'm working for a web vendor, for an e-commerce platform, and it's almost Black Friday, and I can do this because Amazon has this stuff in place, I just do that and make sure that everybody comes to my website instead of yours. We call this irregular expression denial of service. Who of you works on the cloud? Well, normally on the cloud, you might have elastic scaling, right? So it is not a problem. But a new one pops up, and a new one pops up, and a new one pops up, and a new one pops up. That is a denial of pocket money, because I will just drain your fundings. So denial of service might not be a hack, but it's still a problem. Okay, it is easy to make fun of Node, right? But let's make a little bit more fun of Java. So we had this application I already showed you, and let me see if it's still there. It's still there. Let me sign in. No, let me sign up. I don't know my password anymore. So I sign up. It's a new instance anyway. So I will use my name, my email address, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a really secure password, I heard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, and I'm in. No, don't save that one. It's not good. And again, this is a to-do application. We need to do things. So what I can do over here is say something like this: eat pie. Put it somewhere in 1990, 70, which is very reasonable, and make that a high priority. If I call this, you will see it comes back over here, and that pi sign is changed into an ASCII representation. So I know for a fact that every label over here goes to the native to ASCII function that is part of the native JDK. Well, that's fun. What I can do as well over here is I can upload files. And what I can upload over here is I can upload zip files, and it unzips. But what if I'm using a library for that? Because in Java, there is no such thing as an unzip function in the JDK available, or natively available, but we got the building blocks to do so. Say I want to do something like this. Okay, I asked you to remember something. You know what? Yeah, the home folder of the JDK on my Heroku instance. Watch this. I have a zip file over here. Like the bottom line says zip-slip.zip. Okay, so let me take a look at that zip file. This zip file contains 2 files, a good.txt and a file called ////// etc., 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 /app/JDK, which is the JDK path of my Heroku instance, /bin/native to ASCII. And I know that that pi sign was translated into an ASCII representation. What I try to do here is by unzipping it with a library that is there, that I know for a fact may or may not look at my path, or check my path. And if I insert this one, and it, well, simply looks at the path, takes the file name, put these 2 together, and executes, then I might overwrite the native JDK function. Let's see if that works. So I'm choosing a file over here, and I have it over here, demo, yeah. I open that zip-slip.zip, and I upload it. And what you see is that in the public folder where I expect my unzipped files to be, there is that good.txt. Okay, that can mean 2 things. It unzipped, so it can, like, it executed that .. that path traversal, or it ignored it and swallowed the exception. Either way, it's not very good. I expect it to give me some answers. But let's see what happened, because if I'm creating a to-do, and I say, hello, DevSecCon, put it into the 2nd of February in 1970, I give it a medium priority, you will see that my native to ASCII file translated into muhaha, got you. Why? That native to ASCII file, I overrid it with echo Muhaha, gotcha. So basically what I did is because I'm simply using the wrong library or the wrong version of the library that doesn't check for my canonical path, but just basically takes the path and executes it. I'm able to override stuff that is natively there on my Heroku instance. Sounds fun. So what I want to try to say over here is that if you are using libraries, you should be aware of what you're using, right? If you blindly use stuff, you should be aware of what you're using and if this is vulnerable or not. But okay, what is the solution? Well, who was at the keynote here this morning? First of all, and I think you should start with this, is team culture or company culture. And that's the hardest one. I mean, we work with a lot of different people in a team or in a company. We work with developers, and we want to build things. We want to deliver stuff. We want to make sure that new features come up. If they're there, we ship it, and we can focus on another problem. Old-fashioned security engineers don't care if it works. They just want it to be secure, that you're not breached. Operational people, and I'm talking about old-fashioned operational, siloed operations, they care about that stuff is maintainable. That if they get called 3 a.m. in the morning, that you just have to push the button, then it resets and it might work because they can go back to sleep. And management, what do management care about? Basically about profit. And they push you on the fact that you need to get that new feature out before the competitor does. So if we think in a security mindset, and we all take that into account, we need to make sure that we're on the same page. If we're all on the same, we all have the same mindset that security is an important thing, then we can continue with our journey. Because the second thing is process. If I ask a regular crowd, do you want change? And everybody screams, yes, we want change. But do you want to change? You might say yes, but in the end, you say no. Because adding extra process will not work. It might work if you just got breached and there is that magnifying glass and people looking at every inch you take. Then you might do some extra work because, well, people looking at you. But in the end, you come back to that normal routine and you start losing it. You start just looking at your features again. But what if we can take that security mindset and make it non-intrusive in our processes? Make it blend into the process we already have, not add extra process. What if we can do that with a push of a button? What if we can do that automatically? Then it saves you a lot. Instead of, here you got this spreadsheet and you need to do a pen test every time you want to release, because that doesn't work. And then comes the third thing in place, and of course, that's tooling. You need to choose the right tooling that helps you out. And that sounds obvious, but we need to automate as much as possible. For instance, say we have our development pipeline. And I don't mean your CI pipeline, I mean the whole development pipeline, from left to right. And by left, I mean left is this part for you, sorry. Coding on your local machine, right means production. Why not test on your local machine? Why not, if I have the power to do that with tooling, that I can scan if something is wrong, and it gives me actionable results like, hey, you're using this library. If you update a minor version, you got rid of it. For a developer, that is actionable result before entering the stuff into your Git repo. But okay, that's one thing, because if I put it into my package.json or in my POM file or whatever thing you use, I want to be sure that it's there. If I push my stuff to my master branch, to my remote master branch, I first call my unit test to see if something works. Why not do the same thing with checking your dependencies? And then you're in your repository. Why not scan that on a daily basis, because it's there, and get automatic pull requests? Say we have a new version of this out, and that doesn't have the vulnerability you already have. Or if you're comfortable with a level of vulnerabilities, just make sure you're not getting worse. So every pull request that comes in, scan that and get actively notified. That saves you a lot of hassle by doing that manually, right? Then, of course, your CI pipeline. That is, if somebody has security tooling in place, most of the time it's there. It's there as a gatekeeper. If it's there in your CI pipeline, it builds perfect, then we're done, right? We do need that gatekeeper before we go into production. It's true. We still need to use that. But all the parts before that you need to do as well. So that part as the gatekeeper, it has come to the gatekeeper point, you will not be slammed into your face like, bam, it's wrong. Okay, we're there. And then we're in production. And then we're done, right? It's out. It's safe. Let's leave it. It can take up to 2.5 years, remember? So why not just make a snapshot of your state when you went into production and scan that snapshot on a daily basis? And if a vulnerability is found and disclosed and in, well, or our library or the CVE.library or whatever, get actively pinged on that. If you automate all these things and you shift as left as possible, so do it on the right, but every step on the way, do it to the left, then it's quite easy, to be honest. And it's not that intrusive as possible. I mean, I can say this on a developer conference or a developer conference like a Java conference or a Node conference, and we say shift security left. But you already know that. You know what that means. Start from a local machine, ends in production, and keep on continuing. Make sure that if you develop something that you will not regress, you need to design to be compromised. Because it's not if you're compromised, it's when you get compromised. If you want to know more about the stuff, that yellow or that dot in the middle, that's your own code, we wrote a few cheat sheets that can help you with code reviewing or writing secure code, but the majority of your code is not yours. Please automate scanning in that pace. That was my talk. I think I have a few minutes left for questions. Are there any questions? Or do you want to see another hack? Got a few in place. You want to see another hack? Is anybody out there who wants to see another hack? Okay. Come on, request-driven development, right? So, I got one here, and this one is a Spring application. And the Spring application doesn't do much. It's just a grocery list, right? Beans for 50p, milk for £1.09, etc., etc. The items itself are not important as well because it's just a name, a cost, and some getters and setters. But my repository in Spring, that's the fun part. Because if I extend my repository with cross repository, I do not have to write this stuff. It generates it for me by naming convention. Things like find by cost and find by name will automatically be there by just calling the right, or by just naming the right interfaces. That is convenient because I do not want to take care of that. I want to take care of business value or business intelligence. The other fun part is this annotation that can transform my CRUD repo into a REST endpoint, just by that. Which again is very convenient because now I can focus on my front end, right? Let's run this one. So now I have to pray to the demo gods if this one will spin up. Hopefully. Oh, demo gods, please, yes, thank you. So going to localhost 8080, you will see my hell browser. And the hell browser is just another dependency just to show you that I can do a few things. First of all, if I call items, you will see all the items in my grocery list. Beans, milk, bread, etc. I can call items.one and it will give me my first item in the list. Cool, these are just endpoints. I can call that find thing, so find by name, and name is beer. By calling this, you will see I will only get beer. Fun. But there's a problem in this thing, of course, or else I wouldn't show you. So What I can do with this, I can call a patch request, and I can insert it a certain, well, piece of JSON in the body. Not found. Sure. Yeah, there you see it. Let me just do that again and enlarge it a bit. In Spring, they also have an expression language, SPEL, Spring Expression Language. And basically, this is some sort of the same hack as we did with the Apache Struts one. Because what I do here is I will simply get to runtime, and I execute a command. I wire it via an input stream to an output stream, and again, I can call anything, any command that is available on my Linux distro at this point. So by doing this, and this is, well, Apache Struts 2 is an old thing, but this is still quite heavily used. Hopefully not this version, though. So if I'm going to look at the Spring REST exploits, and again, I call the environment variables, I will do a curl patch command with a certain content type and this JSON as a body. I will call it to my local host to that end items one. That endpoint was there just to give me my first item. So normally, in a normal way, if I normally test it, it does its job. But I can utilize this endpoint by inserting this body and getting the environment variables of my local instance. Again, I didn't think of this before I was working for a security company. But now I see that some things don't seem obvious, but if somebody found out to do this, publish this on the internet or whatever, then it's just hunting season, and people can use it. Okay, this was the last one. Are there any questions left? Then I want to thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the conference. Thank you so much.